Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Breaking Moment podcast. I am your host, Regine Bow, and I want to thank my new listeners and I also want to thank my old listeners. Thank you guys all for your support and thank you for tuning in today. And I hope that what's said today can resonate with you and it can help you in your healing journey. I hope that you're able to share this with others. And if you like this channel, please subscribe because I got every month I got something different coming at you, and I hope that this is helpful. Okay. Before we get started, I do want to just talk about a couple holiday reminders. We know that Thanksgiving's coming up, and to some it's exciting. To some, they're excited for the food, they're excited for family, they're excited to travel, whatever the case may be. But to some, it could be a reminder of someone they lost. It could be a reminder of um, a negative time, a traumatic time that happened to them. So I just wanted to, send a reminder that, let's be kind to each other this holiday season. And say someone doesn't show up for the holiday function, let's give them a little bit of grace. Maybe they're struggling with anxiety. Maybe they're struggling with being around a whole bunch of people. Maybe this is a reminder of someone they lost. So, reach out to your friends and family, even if they don't show up to the events. We all go through different things. And I just want us to just be kind. And, if you're that person that says, like, right now you're stressing, you're like, oh my gosh, Thanksgiving's coming and I got to be around this family member and this friend and I'm overwhelmed and it's going to be too much. Take a deep breath and do what's best for you. Maybe you can only handle being around everyone for an hour on Thanksgiving. That's okay. Maybe you can't handle being around anyone at all. That's okay. Like, you have to read your body and what you can handle. Um, but, and if you're feeling that way, please don't feel like you're alone. There's people all over the world where sometimes holidays are the worst times for them because there's just so many reminders of things they went through, people they lost, and things. So I just want to remind you that if that is you, you're not alone. And, you know, just you have to do what's best for you, and it's okay that you need space and time to yourself, or if you have to set the boundary, which we talked about episodes before about boundaries and how they protect us. So maybe your boundary is I can only do 30 minutes here and I'm good. Then that's what you got to do. So don't feel bad for it, but I did want to start off with that because I know by the time you guys listen to this, it'll be a little bit before Thanksgiving, but the next time we will talk, it will be after Thanksgiving. So I wanted to, send that reminder to you guys. So today's topic. Today, I'm so excited, guys. This topic, it's hard. It's definitely going to be hard to my listeners who feel broken, who feel weak, who feel that they're not good enough. But I hope that it may be hard to identify, but I hope that after listening, it gives you a little bit of hope and encouragement that you're not too broken and that you're not too weak and that that you are good enough. Um, yeah, I'm excited about this episode, guys. So today's title, I called it I'm Too Broken for This. So if you have ever said, I'm too broken for this, I'm I'm too broken for happiness. I'm too broken for this job. I'm too broken for this opportunity. I'm too much for this relationship. I'm too broken for the call that God has called in my life. I'm too broken for God to use me. Raise your hand if you've ever said that. If you have, you're not alone. There's so many times where I go through phases and I'm just like, God, are you sure? Like, are you sure? Like, do you know that I struggle with this, this, and this? Like, how is it going to work? How's this going to work? How's that going to work? And it's in these conversations I have with God that I'm reminded that I'm not too broken for this. And, you know, it's hard though. It's hard when that's been implanted in your mind. And then when God calls you to step into different things or places or relationships or whatever the case is, those thoughts never leave us. But it's up to us to not allow them to consume, not allow these thoughts and these negative thoughts to consume our lives, right? because we all go through things that make us feel like we're not qualified, we're not good enough for this, we are too much for this, for that. But God already knows it all, and He loves us, and He still calls us anyway. So that's just a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to go over what it means to feel broken. We're going to talk about how our emotions affect our mind, our body, and our spirit. We're going to talk about steps to change our perspective. And of course, we're going to end with some scripture verses to encourage you and to help you fight this, thought process of I'm too broken, I'm too broken, I'm too weak, I'm too much. Okay? So according to dictionary.cambridge.org, broken is suffering emotional pain that is so strong that it changes the way you live, usually as a result of an unpleasant event. So this can be if we were hurt, if we were abused, if we were rejected, if we were bullied, if we were betrayed, right? These things happen to us and they change our perspective of life. So because I was abused, now I'm not good enough to do this. Now it's my fault that abuse happened. I was bullied. Oh, they bullied me because of my hair, because of how I look. So now you go around with this mask of like, I look ugly, or I can't do this job, I'm ugly, or I'm not smart enough, I'm not this, I'm not that. But it's what happened to us when we were young. And if we don't heal it, and I kind of talked about this last episode, if we don't heal it, then we can be 30, 40, 50, 60, however old, we're still carrying that wound with us, right? So what happens is these things happen to us, the hurt, the abuse, the rejection, being bullied, whatever the case is. And it changes our perspective in life. We start to view the world from a lens of our trauma. So now we think everyone's out to get us. Now we think because you messed up in this area, you're going to mess up in every area. So you're like, God, nope, I don't want that job, or I can't handle that because I messed up the last three things, and we start to live in this trauma lens. And yeah, it messes up how it changes how we see ourselves. We might have at one point seen ourselves as a go-getter and someone that can do it. And then boom, here comes this bad breakup, or boom, here comes this person who treated us wrong. And now we are like, nope, I'm not good enough. I'm a bad person, or I don't deserve good things, right? So it changes our perspective. And if we don't heal from it, that perspective can stay with us for a long time, and it can cause us to miss out on opportunities, to miss out on what God has for us, to miss out on jobs, to miss out on relationships, friendships, whatever the case may be. So that's I want to talk about that because, everyone's definition of broken is different, but I like that one because it's, that emotional pain is, our emotions affect us every single day, right? So that's why I wanted to talk about how the next step is how our emotions affect our mind, our body, and our spirit. So our emotions can affect our mental, our physical, and our spiritual growth. According to an article from www.health.com, the American Psychological Association defines emotions as subjective mental reactions that also involve behavioral and physical responses. In short, your emotions can affect your mind, your actions, and your body. So, our emotions play a big factor in our lives. They play a factor in how we respond to others, how we treat others, how we treat ourselves, how we see the world. Our emotions affect a lot of things in our lives. So when we have this thing that happens to us, boom, we were rejected in school. So now we think we're not good enough. We're weird. We are too much. We're whatever, right? So then we might start feeling sadness and hurt, and then abandonment and these feelings in our body. And then when God calls us to more, and then when something similar happens to us when we grow up, those feelings come back, those emotions come back. And emotion is like it said, it you could feel it in your body, right? Like when I feel anxious, right? Not only is my mind racing, but I can feel it in my chest. I can feel it in my heartbeat. I can feel it. My breathing starts to speed up, right? And you can feel it in your body, and that's why it's so hard. That's why it's hard sometimes if we don't are aware of our emotions, or if we don't talk about them. They can lead us to go in the wrong path, right? Because, if we always allow our emotions to dictate everything in life, right, it can lead us to the wrong places. It can, because if every time I was anxious, I didn't do something, then I wouldn't be where I am now, because it made me anxious doing this podcast. It's like, oh God, are you sure? Like I get anxious every time I do it, but I'm able to now learn coping skills that help me with the anxiety that comes with certain things. But yes, I wanted to talk about that. So we talked about the definition of what it is. We talked about our emotions and how our emotions can affect us and our mind, our body, and our spirit. Um, our emotions can affect our connection with God, because say our spirit man is saying do something, but our emotions are like, no, 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 no. We have to learn to understand our emotions and sit with them and figure out where they're coming from. Nine times out of ten, it's coming from a place. Um, I know some of the anxiety for me that came with it is because I do have that rejection wound. So the anxiety is like, oh, what are people going to think? Or what if I mess up? What if, what if, what if, what if, what if? So many what ifs flood my mind. But I know now I can sit with that feeling and say, this is where it's coming from. This is why it's happening. So, yeah. So, some steps. How can we change? I think in order for us to not believe that we are broken, right? We have to change our perspective. I said that at the beginning. We have to change our perspective because something happened to us 20 years ago, but we're still carrying that weight. Like we're still living life in that world where someone else is living life in their world, where someone else is like, we have that broken lens. So the only way to fix it is to change a perspective, right? We can't change what happened 10 years ago. We can't change what happened 5 years ago. You're absolutely right. And that does suck. But what we can do, what we can focus on is changing our perspective now and focusing on what's happening right at this moment now, right? So in order to change our perspective, in order for us to stop thinking that we're broken, for one, we have to become aware of it, right? Sometimes we don't even know. We might know where it's coming from, but we might not. So we have to become aware that this is even a thing. Like every time this opportunity presents itself, why do I start to like turn away? Why do I start to become avoidant? Why do I start to procrastinate? Why do I start to do these things when this opportunity presents itself? Why do I feel like I don't deserve this? Why do I feel like I'm not good enough for this, right? So in order to change our perspective, we have to first become aware. We have to become aware. It has to come in our mind, in our existence, that there's even a concern. Like, Regine, every time this happens, why do you feel like you're too broken? Why do you feel too weak? Why? Right? So boom, becoming aware. Then we have to identify. So I think when we think of our brokenness, right, we think of our weaknesses. So we think, we're too weak for this opportunity because of what happened in the past, because of what I did in the past, because of how I acted in the past. So we think our weaknesses are who we are. It's almost like we identify with our weaknesses. We identify with that heartbreak. We identify with that rejection. We identify with being bullied. But it's like, that's not all who you are. That's not all of who God called you to be. Yes, you might have went through these things, but that's not all of who you are. So we have to become aware of it. Then we have to identify it. We have to identify our weaknesses. What are our weaknesses? Are we an overthinker? Are we people pleasers? Do we struggle with depression? Do we struggle with anxiety? Do we struggle with control? What is a weakness for you? And it's about identifying it, because how can we fix anything that we don't even know is like a problem? How can we fix something that we aren't owning up to and saying, hey, I want to fix this? God, help me to fix this. Or I want to go to therapy for this. I want to learn how to communicate better. I want to learn how to do this better. We can't do it if we don't become aware of it. And then if we don't identify, what is it? What is the weakness? Why do you think that you feel broken? What about you do you think is even broken? Do you know? And if not, that's going to be your homework. I want you to figure out, what do you think is your weakness? And for my people who are perfectionists, or ex-perfectionists, identifying your weakness doesn't mean you're weaker. Like, I don't know how I could say it better, but what I'm trying to say is sometimes when we sit with the things that we don't like about ourselves, or the brokenness or the weakness feelings, or the things that we think don't qualify us for things, it can mess with our mindset of like, oh, that's like, it kind of makes us feel like we're bringing it to the light, but we don't want to like see it, I guess. I felt like that was hard for me to talk about my like weaknesses at first, because it's like, if I talk about them, it's like they're in my face, like I'm being reminded of it, and we don't want to talk about it. But it's bringing it to the light. How can we fix this? How can we fix this broken feeling if we can't even bring what our weaknesses are to the light? Because it's in bringing it to the light, then we can, figure out what we can do to help ourselves, how we can heal from this broken mindset that we think that we're too broken for this, So we want to become aware of it. We want to identify what we think our weaknesses are. And then we want to pray and read scriptures, because there's sometimes things that we've been through that it's almost like, God, I don't even know how. How am I ever going to get through this? Like, how are you ever going to use me? But it's God's going to communicate with you, and it's in praying to him about it. God already knows everything about us. He already knows what our weaknesses are, our traumas. He knows our future. He knew us well. He knows everything. So because of that, it's about us recognizing it and bringing it to him and asking him to help us. God, help me with this perspective that I'm too broken for doing your work, I'm too broken for being in this room, that I'm too broken for this opportunity. I'm too weak for this because of something that happened to me 10 years ago. And God will help you. So praying and reading scriptures, because I said this last episode, everything that we go through or think about, or whatever the case is, has happened in the Bible, and the Bible's there to help us. So we're going to read those scriptures. So if you think your weakness is pride, there's plenty of scriptures about pride and what the Bible says about pride, right? There's plenty of scriptures about if you're a people pleaser. There's plenty of scriptures about if you're struggling with anxiety. You think your weakness is, I have this mental illness, God, or I have this mental condition where I'm just so anxious and I can't get out of bed. And because of that, God, you can't use me because I'm a broken mess, right? But God still can use you. And it's reading the scriptures, it's becoming aware of it, it's identifying it, and then it's praying to him about it. God, I don't know what to do. This anxiety is too much. What do I do? Where do I go from here? How do I move forward? And then there's plenty of scriptures about anxiety. There's plenty of scriptures about depression, right? So become aware, identify, pray, and reading scriptures. Another statement we can do, and I've shared this before with, I think, some of my other episodes. My therapist gave me this statement, and I really like it because it helps us identify how we're feeling, bringing it to light how we're feeling, but also helping us to identify what we're doing about it, right? So it's called even though, ... nevertheless, ... So even though I struggle with anxiety, nevertheless, I still get up and go to therapy every time I have a session. So you're identifying what's happening, the anxiety, you're validating your feelings, but nevertheless, I'm doing something about it. And I get, sometimes we want things done and it'd be snap of a finger, it's gone tomorrow. That's not how it works, but at least we can identify we're doing something. Even though I feel so depressed right now, nevertheless, I got out of bed today. So you're recognizing that I'm trying. And I think that helps us because we can beat ourselves up like, oh, I need to be here. Or, I keep allowing this depression and this anxiety. And then it spirals and we're negative. But it's even though I'm struggling right now, nevertheless, I'm praying to God about it. You're doing something about helping yourself and you're validating yourself also. So try that statement. I encourage you. Another step to changing our perspective. I want us to work on healing our inner child. I've done an episode about healing the inner child. So if you haven't listened to that, please stop and go listen to it because it really is important. A lot of our healing work comes from that child. A lot of things happened to us when we were younger. And, the inner child doesn't have to be when you were 4 or 5. Your younger self doesn't have to be when you were 6, 7. It can be the past version of you. So it could be 2 years ago. That's your younger self, right? 2 years ago, you were younger. So it's important to work on that part of you because a lot of the root of why you feel broken is from that child. Something that child went through, something that your younger self went through, whether it was at school, whether it was at home, whether it was whatever the case is, whether it was in Delaware, whether it was in Pennsylvania, whether it was in California, wherever it was, whenever it was, something happened there. It didn't just you woke up and it's like, oh, I have anxiety. No, stuff happened for you to have anxiety, whether it was you always felt like, things were out of your control. So now you feel like you need to control everything, or something happened right now you feel depressed. Like, were you constantly disappointed? Did you lose hope? Like something happened with that little child that is now being carried on to now, which is why you are still carrying that broken feeling. I'm too broken, God, because of what happened to me in the past, right? So I want us to work on healing our inner child because that's probably going to help you find out the root of why you feel the way you do. And it's hard to change anything when we don't understand the why. Like, why is this happening? We could sit there and say, I have anxiety, I want to fix it. But where's it coming from? Like, a lot of times we want to fix the surface, but we got to fix the root, because it's going to keep showing up. But now it's like, oh, now I can see that little girl who's anxious because of what happened then. And I can sit with her and say, you know what? I know that this is coming up because this reminds me of when I was 10 years old and at school, this thing happened and then that made my anxiety increase. And you can now identify why it's happening and then you can move forward, right? So I want us to work on healing our inner child. And like I said, if you haven't listened to the episode, please pause right now and go listen to it. So we talked about becoming aware, identifying weaknesses, praying and reading scripture, and working on healing our inner child. Another thing, talk with people. Talk with people you trust. Is it a friend? Is it a family member? Is it your mom? Is it your dad, your sister, cousin, brother, whoever? Is it a pastor? Is it a therapist? Bring it to light. So many things fester in darkness. I realized this when I was going through my breaking moment and when I was going through everything and I didn't understand it. I just knew that so many emotions and thoughts and things were happening and I didn't like it. It felt uncomfortable, but I could feel it getting worse the more I said nothing, right? To the point where I literally just remember calling my mom in my room and I said, Mom, I have to talk to you. And I literally just started bawling. Like it was just like everything which is fine, but talk with people, because what happened was the more I held it in, the more it just festered in my head. And when we bring things to light, we don't have to be embarrassed about it anymore. We don't have to hide from it anymore. It's out there, and now God can work with you with it. God already knows. He just wants us to confess it with our mouth. God, I need help. God, I need help with my anxiety. God, I need help with my depression. God, I don't know why these thoughts keep happening and then this happens and that happens. I don't know what to do. God, help me. God wants us to bring it to the light. And maybe it's hard healing ourselves. It's hard going back to things that have hurt us. So that's why I said, if it helps, maybe talk with someone you trust that's not going to judge you and be like, ew, what? You did what? That happened to you? You don't want someone that's going to be all judgmental and be like, ugh. You want someone that's going to understand and listen to you and respond with what you need to hear, right? So bring it to the light. bring it to the light by talking to people you trust. Maybe you trust nobody. There's some people that don't. And that's a whole nother wound, right? Because why do you feel like you can trust no one, right? What happened to you while you were a child? So many things I'm going to tie back to childhood, because we don't just wake up and say, I don't trust nobody. You know why? Because we are human beings. We are relational beings. God didn't create us to be isolated from each other all the time, right? So why do you feel like you have to isolate all the time? Why do you feel like you don't want to be around no one, tell nobody nothing? You don't rely on no one. What's the root cause? What happened to you when you were little? What happened to you 2 years ago? What happened to you, right? But I say that to say, bring it to the light. And for my people that don't trust no one, maybe start off with, family members, friends hurt you, betrayed you, whatever the case is. Maybe go to someone that doesn't even know you, a therapist. I'm always advocating for therapists, because it really does. It's a game changer. It's someone that literally knows nothing about you, but just wants to help you. And they're hearing it from a perspective that they're not close to you. They didn't grow up with you. They're not there to judge you. They're just there to listen and help you and give you the encouragement you need and give you the tools and help you to hear the things that you need to hear to help you grow, right? So become aware, identify it. What's the weakness? Pray, read scriptures, work on healing the inner child, talk with someone, bring it to the light. And then find a community of people who are going through similar things, right? So when we have that broken mentality, I feel like we probably want to isolate, right? We think that we're not good enough. We think that we are too much. We're not loved or whatever. And it might cause us to want to isolate. It might cause us to want to be away from people. And let me tell you, the enemy loves when we isolate. He loves when we believe these lies about ourselves, and he wants to keep feeding us more lies, right? And he keeps feeding us more lies until it's just like we believe every lie he says. But it's in the communities where we realize we're not alone. Like, you're not the only one that struggles with anxiety. You're not the only one that struggles with depression. You're not the only one that went through physical abuse. You're not the only one that went through sexual abuse. And we think we're too broken because of this one thing that happened, but it's happened to other people. And it does suck, but maybe we can find communities of people. Then you can see that, oh my goodness, this person went through what I went through, and look at them. They did go through that depression phase, but now they're running a company. Now they are CEOs. Now they are a teacher and helping others. Now they're a pastor, whatever the case is. But it's in these communities that we realize that we're not alone in this. And we won't feel as broken, because it's like, wait, other people have gone through this and they have overcome it. And yes, we have days where it feels like we go backwards, but we don't have to stay there. We're human beings. Things are going to happen. Healing is not linear. It's good days, bad days, okay days, weird days, whatever the case is, right? But communities help us to grow, because if you're with a group of supporters that have been through what you've gone through, you won't feel as broken, right? Because you know other people have gone through it and you've seen how they've overcome it. And maybe they can help you. Maybe they can say, oh, you know what? You know what helped me when I was depressed? This. And what if what they did when they were depressed ends up helping you to get out of your depression? And now you don't feel as broken, right? So let's lean into our communities. There's so many groups online. You can look up groups online, and there's groups in the community. Like, do your home, I want you guys to do your homework, but there's so many communities of different people that have gone through different things. And when we come together, we're going to be stronger. We're going to encourage each other, and we're going to overcome that perspective of being too broken, right? That I'm too broken for this perspective. So just to remind you all, become aware, identify the weakness, pray, read scripture, work on healing the inner child. And that one, it's going to take time, right? Talk with people about it. And find communities of people who are going through similar things than you, okay? All right. So we're now at the scriptures. But before I start with the scriptures, I just had a thought. So we have said to ourselves, God, why have you called me to this? Why? I'm too broken. I'm too much. Remember when? I'm too weak. I don't have a purpose in this world. I'm this. I'm that. We've said it to ourselves. Maybe we've said it to God. We may have said it to other people. But I want us to just take a minute and just think about everything in this world. God has a purpose for every single thing in the world. Everything. So why would he look at you and say, sorry, Regine, you're too broken for this. You don't have a purpose in this world. You're too weak for that. Why would he do that if he's given everything in the world purpose, right? Everything God creates has a purpose. From those annoying gnats that for some reason are going crazy this year. I don't know about y'all, but gnats are just too much. I think because the weather's warm, cold, whatever. But God has a purpose for those annoying gnats. He has a purpose for the buzzing bees. And he has a purpose for those food stealing flies, right? All those gnats, flies, they just irk me, guys. I'm serious. But there's a purpose for them. So why would God look at you and say, sorry, you're too broken for this? Sorry, Regine, you don't have a purpose in this world. Sorry, you messed up too much. Sorry, remember what you did when you were 5? Sorry, that disqualifies you for this. Too much. You're too much. You're too broken. You have no purpose. Why would God say that? Why would God think that about us? He wouldn't. Everything in this world has purpose. God has given everything in this world purpose. Every single thing, creatures, people, everything. So I wanted to say that because we're saying these things about ourselves that we're too broken, we're not qualified, we're too weak, but God has given everything purpose. So it doesn't make sense, right? It just doesn't, And it's like I literally had this thought the other day when I was getting ready for work, and I just was like, God, I'm just too broken for this. And I think it's because some of the things that the job requires is weaknesses for me. But I'm learning that when I am weak, then I am strong. Right? That's what I'm learning. And that's going to tie us into the first verse. So the first verse that I want us to read is 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7 through 10. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7 through 10. And I'm going to be reading from the English Standard Version. And it says, so to keep me from becoming conceited because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations, a thorn was given me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to harass me, to keep me from becoming conceited. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about this, that it should leave me. 3 times, guys. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weakness, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weakness, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Wow. So, as I was telling God that I'm too broken for this job, this verse came in my mind, right? And this just ties it all in, is when we feel too broken, when we feel too weak, when we feel too whatever, God is saying that in our weaknesses, right? His grace is sufficient, for his power is made perfect in weakness. So you're not too weak. God is still going to use you in that weakness, okay? But in the flesh, we feel too weak, but it's when we connect with God that we are strong. And this verse, I believe that, our weaknesses keep us from being, like if you read the beginning of the verse, right? He said the thorn was given to him in the flesh. And he asked God 3 times. He pleaded with the Lord about it, that it should leave. God, please take this from me. How many times do we say that? God, please take this anxiety. Please take this away. Please take this away. But God is saying, he's saying that it's in the weakness, because then when we're weak, we need God. It causes us to connect with him. It causes God's glory and God's grace, and it causes God to be shown in our lives when we are weak, and then we call on him and we rely on him. So the next time you find yourself saying, God, please take this away. God, I'm too weak for this. I'm too broken for this. I can't do it. I want you to remember that that God's grace is sufficient and his power is made in our weakness. It keeps us from being all prideful and boastful and conceited, because now we got to rely on him. We can't do it on our own strength. We can't say, oh, I'm going to do this on my own. No, we need God, because we have too much baggage. We have too much weakness. We have too much stuff. But when we are connected with God, we're going to be okay, And this verse really resonated with me, and I hope it resonates with you guys. And the end of it says, for the sake of Christ, then, I am content. Content, right? Yeah, we may not love it, but we're content. We're okay with it, because we know that we're all going to have stuff. We are. Everyone has a weakness. Everyone has something that they think is like, oh, like if I didn't have this, then this, right? Everyone has something they don't like about themselves. Everyone has a weakness. Everyone has something. But I am content with weakness, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. We're okay with the afflictions. We're okay with the burdens. We're okay with the suffering, because God said. So God didn't say in the scripture, all right, you're weak, so now you are unqualified. Nope. It says, for when I am weak, then I am strong. So because you have a weakness, right? You're going to get God's not going to just leave you somewhere and be like, sorry, figure it out. If he's called you to it, he's going to help you get through it. I can say my weakness is my anxiety, 1,000%. I literally, sometimes when I have to speak, it's like my brain shuts off. I just forget everything. And that's a weakness for me. So that's why I'm like, God, how am I going to do a podcast? But it's in these weaknesses that I'm strong. God called me to this. He's going to help me get through it. God knows it all. He already knew this, right? So the next time, and it talks about the thorn in the flesh. That thorn in the flesh could be, for you, it could be psychological struggles. It could be physical affliction. So you could be saying, oh, God, if only you took this away then. No. Maybe that thorn is there for a reason, right? So that in that weakness, you rely on God. You don't do it in your own strength, right? So the next time you have those thoughts, I want you to think about this verse. Again, it is 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7 through 10. The next time you feel too broken, the next time you feel like you have too many weaknesses, God, take them all away. I can't do it. God literally says his grace is sufficient for you, for my power. His power is made perfect in weakness. So you're not too broken for this. You're not too weak for this. God literally says that we are strong. We are strong in him. We are strong in him, only with him and our weakness. Okay? The next verse is Psalms 34, 17 through 18. When the righteous cry for help, the Lord hears and delivers them out of all their troubles. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. It does not say God leaves the brokenhearted, right? So you feel brokenhearted, so you start isolating yourself and you say, nope, God is like mad at me and God thinks I'm too much, so I'm not going to pray. Like, I'm an embarrassment and this and that. Nope. It says that he hears. Lord hears and delivers us out of our troubles. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and he saves the crushed in spirit. So you can lean on him. You can go to him. You're not too broken for him. You're not. No matter what the enemy says, no matter what you've done, what you've thought of, no matter what, you're not too broken for God at all. Because before Jeremiah chapter 1-5, and this is the King James Version. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. Before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee. And I ordained thee a prophet into the nations. Right? So God knows everything. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. So you don't think he knows about your brokenness? The thing right now in your mind that you're like, no, you don't understand. You don't understand what I went through. You don't understand what I did. I can't be forgiven. God's never going to love me. No, you don't understand. I'm saying back to you, you don't understand. God already knew. God already knows. And even though you went through that, he still has a plan for you. He still has a call on your life. You still have a purpose in the world. You are not too broken for him. You are not too broken for this. You are not too broken for God. You're not. I promise you you're not. I promise you you're not. And before you guys say no, like I have some examples here in the Bible because I'm being serious. Like it's hard. Like, these thoughts that come in our mind and we're just like, God, I'm just too much for you. I'm sorry. That's what the enemy wants you to think. He wants you to think you messed up too much for God. You messed up. God's never going to use you. That's not the case. So I'm going to talk about 3 people in the Bible. I'm going to talk about Moses, Rahab, and Peter. I'll talk about Moses first. Moses. So Moses led the Israelites. He led the Israelites out of slavery. They were in Egypt. No, I'm sorry. He led the Israelites, yes, out of Egypt. And one of the first things when God called Moses to lead the people, right? Moses was like, he said he's slow of speech. So he's worrying about his weakness, his brokenness. Like, God, I can't speak like my speech. Like, how am I going to lead these people out of slavery, right? And you know what God said? God reminded him who made man's mouth. And God told him that he would teach him what to say. God also sent Aaron, who was his brother, and he gave Moses a staff that kind of assisted him throughout his journey. So the point to this is, Moses says, God, I'm too broken. God, this is too much. God, I'm too weak. I can't talk right. Like, how am I going to do this? But God's like, hold on. I created the mouth. God's like, hold on. I created this world. So God already knows, like, no, you're called for this. But our flesh says no. But God says yes. And God helped Moses take the Israelites out. But he helped him. He helped him. So in Moses' weakness, God was strong. God provided the things for him to say. God helped him to know what to say. God, like I said, he had his brother. He allowed his brother to help him. He had the staff that helped him. God didn't just say, sorry, figure it out. God knew that Moses would be like, I'm too weak. Like, I'm too broken. Like, I can't talk right? But no, God was with him. And God's going to be with you. You're not too broken for this. Okay, Rahab. Rahab was a prostitute, right? And we know that when people do certain things, we have judgmental minds, right? So someone might say, a prostitute, how are they going to help? How are they going to be a help to God, right? That's what someone might say. But God used Rahab to hide the spies. So Joshua was sent 2 men to view the land, to view the promised land, right? But there were people after these men. And God used Rahab to hide these men where she was at. And someone might say, like, why would God use the prostitute to hide the two men? Like, what? But God used her. She could have said, God, I'm too broken. I'm a prostitute. How can I do your work? I'm too filthy. I'm too this. I'm too that. But God used her, right? God used her. And that was a big deal because these two spies, were there to look at the promised land. And if they got caught, who knows what could happen, right? But God used a prostitute, Rahab, who probably thought, maybe she thought she wasn't good enough, right? Or other people probably judge her like, oh, but God used her. She wasn't too broken. And then Peter, good old Peter. So Peter was a fisherman. He was called Simon, but God gave him the name Peter, which means rock. And, he became apostle of Jesus. He spread the word of the gospel. And Jesus told Peter that he was going to deny him 3 times. He was going to deny Jesus 3 times, right? And he did. God was right. He denied him 3 times because God knows all. So he told him that, But God never said, you denied me, right? Sorry, I can't use you. No, God used Peter all throughout the Bible, right? God used Peter because that's who God called him to be an apostle and spread it, spread the word of the gospel. And Peter probably was like, God, like, I don't deserve it. I denied you 3 times. Like, how do I deserve this opportunity? And that might be you. Like, I just used those 3, but there's so many in the Bible that you can just look up and see. You could be someone that maybe did things in the past that you're not proud of. You could be someone that's denied God. You could have denied him yesterday, like, I don't believe in God, or is God even real, right? But God can still use you. You're not broken. You're not too much. God already knows and knew that you would be listening to this episode. He already knows that you would have denied him, or you would have struggled with this, or you would have struggled with that, right? But you're not too broken for this, okay? Like, if you get nothing out of all the things I said in this 47-minute video or whatever, however long it's going to be, I want you to know you are not too broken for this. You matter. You have a purpose in this world. Don't let your past, don't let the enemy, don't let lies, don't let something that happened to you 10, 15 years ago stop you from doing what God has called you to do. Because something that you have, someone out there is waiting for it, whether you're a speaker, whether you're a teacher, whether you are a preacher, whether you are helping in outreach, whatever the case is, there's something that God has given you that can help so many people in the world. You are not too broken for God. You're not too broken to do God's work. No matter what you've done, no matter if you denied God, no matter if you were a prostitute or you've done something that is sinful, we all sin. For one, we all sin, whether you think that you have a speech impediment or you're just, God, I can't. God is with you. God is with you. God already knows. God has called you still, right? He loves you. When you were weak, then you were strong. When you were weak, then you were strong in God. When you were weak, then you were strong. God knows all things. And before we leave, I want us to say one thing. Can I get everyone to say this? When I am weak, then I am strong, because with God by my side, I can do it all. One more time, everybody. When I am weak, then I am strong, because with God by my side, I can do all. Why? Because I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. All right, guys. Thank you for listening. I really hope that something was said today that helps you feel a little less alone, that helps you know that you are not alone, that God loves you, that you're not too broken for this. You're not too broken for God. I hope that this helps you. And please, if there's someone that came in your mind while you were listening to this, please share it with others so that someone else can, hear this and break free from that that mindset of feeling too broken for God. We never want, I want us to know that we're not too broken from God. Nothing you've done, nothing you thought, nothing you said. And I want to wish everyone happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays, safe travels to everyone. And remember to take care of yourself, take care of your mind, take care of your body, take care of you these holiday seasons. I love you all, and I'll see you next month. Bye.